Hello and welcome to CVR News Network. You're watching CVR English World 360 and I'm Sandeep. US President Donald Trump has strongly criticized the Biden administration for allocating $21 million to support India voter turnout, questioning the necessity and intent behind such financial aid. Speaking at a summit in Miami, Trump speculated that the funding might have been an attempt to influence India's elections, expressing his doubts about why American taxpayers' money should be spent on a foreign nation's electoral process. He remarked, why do US taxpayers need to spend $21 million on voter turnout in India? And he said that he guessed they were trying to get somebody else elected. Trump framed this revelation as an example of excessive government spending and misuse of federal funds, positioning it as a key issue in his ongoing critique of the Biden administration. He further emphasized that during his tenure, his administration worked diligently to eliminate fraud, waste, and unnecessary expenditures within the federal government. His comments have added to the broader debate about US foreign aid priorities, sparking discussion on whether such funding aligns with America's national interests.
And here are just a few examples of where your money was going before I came along. These are just some of the, just taken at random. Oh, there are much worse examples than this. I was just looking at them before the speech, and I can tell you they were much worse. And $21 million for voter turnout in India. What do we need to spend $21 million for voter turnout in India? Wow, $21 million. I guess they were trying to get somebody else elected. Well, we ought to tell the Indian government, because when we hear that Russia spent about $2 in our country, it was a big deal, right? They took some internet ads for $2,000. This is a total breakthrough. And at random. Oh, there are much worse examples than this. I was just looking at them before the speech, and I can tell you they were much worse. And there are some that are horrible, but I don't want to really say them because they're very, very embarrassing to people. Very, very embarrassing. And they're really something, but you'll be seeing it and you will be reading about it. But just some taken at random. $2 million for sex change operations in Guatemala, $20 million for Sesame Street performances in Iraq. $20 million, that's a lot of money. You know, I know what it costs to do those things. You get a cast over for $50,000, give them a couple of bucks tip, and that's it, not $20 million. 20 million, that's Gone with the Wind on steroids. $101 million for 29 diversity, equity, and inclusion contracts at the Department of Education. Wow. And we've canceled all of these, saved all of this money. And again, $20 million for a consultant. I want to know, who is that consultant? To do ESG, that's environmental, social, and governance investments in Africa. $25 million to promote biodiversity conservation and illicit livelihoods by developing socially responsible behavior in Colombia. $40 million to improve the social and economic inclusion of sedentary migrants. Nobody knows what that even means. None of this stuff, everyone's trying to figure out, what the hell does it all mean? $42 million for social and behavior changes in Uganda. 40 million's a lot of newspaper ads in Uganda. $70 million for research of evidence-based solutions for development challenges. $10 million for Mozambique medical male circumcision. What does that mean? $2.3 million for strengthening independent voices in Cambodia. $14 million for improving public procurement in Serbia. $486 million to the Consortium for Elections and Political Process Strengthening, including $22 million for inclusive, participatory political process in Moldova. And $21 million for voter turnout in India. What do we need to spend $21 million for voter turnout in India? Wow, $21 million. I guess they were trying to get somebody else elected. Well, we ought to tell the Indian government, because when we hear that Russia spent about $2 in our country, it was a big deal, right? They took some internet ads for $2,000. This is a total breakthrough. $21 million for India elections, $29 million to strengthen the political landscape in Bangladesh, $20 million for fiscal federalism, and $19 million in addition to the $21 million for biodiversity conversion in Nepal, $1.5 million for voter confidence in Liberia. We need voter confidence too when you read this list. $14 million for social cohesion in Mali, $2.5 million for inclusive democracies in South Africa, $47 million for improving learning outcomes in Asia. Asia's doing very well. We don't need to give them money. And in another program, $50 million plus another $50 million for condoms for Hamas. You know about that? $100 million for condoms. Condoms. Does everybody know what a condom is? For Hamas, $100 million. And these are just some. I could read this list all day long. I just don't want to bore you. But these are just some, and not nearly as bad as others. And some are just...
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has firmly rejected former US President Donald Trump's claim that Ukraine is scared the war with Russia, calling it misleading and disconnected from the reality. Speaking at a press conference, Zelensky underscored Ukraine's deep respect for the United States and its continued appreciation for the American support, but expressed concern over Trump's remarks. He stated that Trump is living in a disinformation bubble and cautioned that such narratives could undermine Ukraine's struggle against Russian aggression. He further released a video message, and in that video message released ahead of his scheduled meeting with Trump's representative, General Kellogg, Zelensky emphasized the importance of constructive cooperation with the US and European allies. He stressed that securing lasting peace in the region requires a united approach, urging international partners to reaffirm their commitment to Ukraine rather than being swayed by misinformation. His remarks come amid growing tensions over the evolving US-Ukraine relationship and the global response to Russia's ongoing invasion.
Прямо зараз ніяк не вийде. Тобто, на жаль, президент Трамп, з великою повагою до нього відносимося як до лідера народу, який ми дуже поважаємо, американський народ, який нас постійно підтримує. На жаль, живе в цьому дезінформаційному просторі. І тому я би хотів, щоб було більше правди у команди Трампа. Бо все це впливає точно на, точно не позитивно на Україну не впливає, а впливає на те, що вони виводять із ізоляції Путіна. І я думаю, що Путін і русські, вони дуже радіють, тому що обговорюються питання з ними, і вчора вже були сигнали з ними як жертвою, це щось нове.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Сьогодні в Україні були доповіді військових про фронт, про Курську операцію. Наші хлопці тримають позиції. І завдяки цьому зберігаються позиції нашої держави. Сьогодні багато роботи було із новими замовленнями для нашої армії. І це наше внутрішнє виробництво. Ми пропрацьовуємо нові контракти. І політичний момент. Багато зустрічей, нарад сьогодні, командування армії, розвідка, міністри для підготовки до перемовин з представником президента Сполучених Штатів Америки. Генерал Келлог вже в Києві. Він вже зустрічався з главкомом Сирським, з нашими керівниками розвідок та спеціальних служб, також з керівником мого офісу. На завтра запланована наша зустріч з генералом Келлогом. І для нас дуже важливо, щоб зустріч і взагалі робота з Америкою була конструктивною. Разом з Америкою і Європою мир може бути надійніше. І це є нашою метою. Головне, щоб це було не тільки нашою метою, а спільною з партнерами. Тим більше напередодні вже третіх роковин початку цієї війни. Війни, яку ми в Україні хочемо закінчити від першої ж її секунди. Я впевнений, завершимо і надійним миром, І так, щоб Росія не змогла прийти в Україну ще раз, і щоб повернулись українці з російського полону.
US President Donald Trump has intensified his criticism of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, labeling him a dictator without elections and a modestly good comedian who allegedly manipulated President Joe Biden. These remarks come in response to Zelensky's recent statement accusing Trump of residing in a Russian-made disinformation space. Trump's comments reflect his ongoing skepticism towards US support for Ukraine, a stance that has sharply divided American political circles. While Trump and his allies continue to question the extent of US involvement in the conflict, his political opponents argue that backing Kiev is essential for countering Russian aggression and preserving global stability. The escalating war of words between Trump and Zelensky underscores the broader geopolitical tensions surrounding the war in Ukraine and its impact on international alliances.
Comedian. President Zelensky talked the United States of America into spending $350 billion to go into a war that basically couldn't be won, that never had to start and never would have started if I was president, not even a chance. And it didn't start for 4 years, never would have started. But a war that he, without the U.S. and Trump, will never be able to settle. They'll never settle that war without our involvement. That's why they did such a great job this weekend. That's why Saudi Arabia did such a great job this weekend in hosting. The United States has spent $200 billion more than Europe, and Europe's money is guaranteed. They get their money back. It's a form of a loan. Nobody knows that. I know that. I said, why isn't somebody saying, we do it the same way? And we spent much more money. We have to equalize. But while the United States gets nothing back, so they get their money back. It's a loan. We just give our money. And we had a deal based on rare earth and things, but they broke that deal. But they broke it 2 days ago. We had a deal because I said, we're spending $350 billion, and Europe gets their money back in the form of a loan, and we don't. We're just giving the money hand over fist. That's the Biden administration for you. But they're no longer dealing with the same United States as they were dealing with a few months ago. Why didn't crooked Joe Biden demand equalization, and that this war is far more important to Europe than it is to us, and that there's a very big, beautiful ocean, a separation? This is, we're helping Europe. We're trying to help Europe. On top of this, Zelensky admits that half of the money that we sent them is missing. They don't know where the money is. He said, well, we don't know where half of it is. That's great, wonderful. He refuses to have elections. It's low in the real Ukrainian polls. I mean, how can you be high with every city is being demolished? It's hard to be high. Somebody said, oh, no, his polls are good. Give me a break. Every city is being demolished. They look like a demolition site, every single one of them. And the only thing he was really good at was playing Joe Biden like a fiddle. He played him like a fiddle. That's an expression we use, yes, sir, to say that he's pretty easy. A dictator without elections. Zelensky better move fast, or he's not going to have a country left. Got to move fast, because that war is going in the wrong direction. In the meantime, we're successfully negotiating an end to the war with Russia, something all admit that only Trump is going to be able to do in the Trump administration. We're going to be able to do it. I think Putin even admitted that. Biden never tried. Europe has failed to bring peace, and Zelensky probably maybe he wants to keep the gravy train going. I don't know what's the problem, but he hasn't been able. He's very upset that he wasn't invited. He could have come if he wanted to, but that he wasn't invited to Saudi Arabia. But he's been working for 3 years. There's never been even meetings or phone calls to stop this war. It's a horrible thing. I figure Russia's lost 900,000 soldiers. I think that Ukraine's lost probably 700,000. And it's a terrible thing. You'll see bodies and body parts all over the field, all over. We see them very accurately through satellites. I love Ukraine, but Zelensky has done a terrible job. His country is shattered, and millions of people have unnecessarily died. And you can't bring a war to an end if you don't talk to both sides. You got to talk. They haven't been talking for 3 years. So we hope to see a ceasefire soon and to reestablish stability in Europe and the Middle East. Thank you very much. And as I've said before, it's my hope that my greatest legacy will be as a peacemaker and a unifier. That would be a great legacy. But think of it, a modestly successful comedian. President Zelensky talked the United States of America into spending $350 billion.
Several U.S. senators have strongly condemned for President Donald Trump's claim that Ukraine initiated the war with Russia, emphasizing that it was Russia that invaded Ukrainian territory near 3 years ago. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer denounced Trump's remarks as disgusting, accusing him of siding with Russian President Vladimir Putin rather than supporting a key U.S. ally. The controversy has further deepened political divisions in Washington as lawmakers debate the future military aid and assistance to Kiev. While some Republicans aligned with Trump's skepticism over continued aid, others arguing that maintaining U.S. support for Ukraine is critical to deterring Russian expansionism and uphold global security. The ongoing debate highlights the broader challenges in shaping America's foreign policy amid shifting political dynamics. Hamas fighters have gathered in Khan Yunis to hand over the bodies of the 4 Israeli hostages, including the members of the Bibas family, who have become symbolic of the ongoing hostage crisis since the outbreak of Gaza war. The coffins, believed to contain the remains of the hostages, were transferred to the Red Cross, marking the first such handover by Hamas since the attack on Israel on October 7th, which triggered the war. The exchange is taking place under a fragile ceasefire agreement, which has also seen the release of living hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners held in Israeli jails. The situation remains tense as both sides navigate the complexities of the ongoing conflict and negotiations.
المصيبة انه في اي شيء فلوس كثيرة 24 ساعة كانت تغلط على حرامية حرامية هذه حرامية يعني قاعد بطلع فيهم مبادحة وخايفين هاي قاعدين حاطين ايديهم في الجبل وقاعدين حرامية يكون مثبت على هذا يكون مثبت
غني فلسطين غني بالضيف وانت هني وزينا وصفينا والعيد فلسطين غني بالضيف وانت هني زيناهم ميدان ما حد زيه وفي الليالي شفنا لما يجيب سلاح
الصورة
بسم الله من جد الولد فلسطين ناجينا جايين والعز الولد يا قدسنا.
هذا ليش مش تنزيل مش رفع. المصيبة من الشارع، المصيبة انه في اي شيء فلوس كثيرة 24 ساعة كانت تغلط على حرامية الجلسات. حرامية هذا شو حرامية؟ يعني قاعد بطلع فيه مبادحة وخايفين هاي قاعدين حاطين ايديهم في الجواب وقاعدين. حرامية بيكون مثبت على الباب. هذا بيكون مثبت على
غني فلسطين غني بالضيف واخوان تهني وزينا والعيد فلسطين غني بالضيف واخوان تهني زيناهم ميدان ما حد زيه وفي الليالي شفنا لما يجيب سلاح بسم الله من جد الولد فلسطين ناجينا جايين والعز الولد يا قدسنا.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has expressed profound sorrow over the return of 4 deceased hostages, calling it a heartbreaking moment for the nation. As Israel prepares for a day of mourning, Netanyahu extended his condolences to the grieving families, acknowledging the immense pain caused by the ongoing hostage crisis. The return of the bodies underscores the deep human cost of conflict, even as diplomatic negotiations continue in efforts to secure the release of remaining captives. The development comes amid a fragile ceasefire, with international mediators working to facilitate further exchanges and de-escalations in the region.
מחר יהיה יום מאוד קשה למדינת ישראל, יום מטלטל, יום של יגון. אנחנו מחזירים הביתה 4 מחטופינו האהובים, חללים. אנחנו מחבקים את המשפחות, והלב של אומה שלמה נקרא, הלב שלי נקרא, גם שלכם. וצריך שהלב של כל העולם יקרא, כי פה רואים מול מי יש לנו עסק, עם מה יש לנו עסק, עם איזה מפלצות. אנחנו עוד אוהבים, אנחנו כואבים, אבל אנחנו גם נחושים להבטיח שדבר כזה לא יקרה יותר. מחר יהיה יום מאוד קשה למדינת ישראל, יום מטלטל, יום של יגון. אנחנו מחזירים הביתה 4 מחטופינו האהובים, חללים. אנחנו מחבקים את המשפחות, והלב של אומה שלמה נקרא, הלב שלי נקרא, גם שלכם. וצריך שהלב של כל העולם יקרא, כי פה רואים מול מי יש לנו עסק, עם מה יש לנו עסק, עם איזה מפלצות. אנחנו עוד אוהבים, אנחנו כואבים, אבל אנחנו גם נחושים להבטיח שדבר כזה לא יקרה יותר. מחר יהיה יום מאוד קשה למדינת ישראל, יום מטלטל, יום של יגון. אנחנו מחזירים הביתה 4 מחטופינו האהובים, חללים. אנחנו מחבקים את המשפחות, והלב של אומה שלמה נקרא, הלב שלי נקרא, גם שלכם. וצריך שהלב של כל העולם יקרא. כי פה רואים מול מי יש לנו עסק, עם מה יש לנו עסק, עם איזה מפלצות. אנחנו עוד אוהבים, אנחנו כואבים, אבל אנחנו גם נחושים להבטיח שדבר כזה לא יקרה יותר. מחר יהיה יום מאוד קשה למדינת ישראל. יום מטלטל, יום של יגון. אנחנו מחזירים הביתה 4 מחטופינו האהובים, חללים. אנחנו מחבקים את המשפחות, והלב של אומה שלמה נקרא. הלב שלי נקרא, גם שלכם. וצריך שהלב של כל העולם יקרא. כי פה רואים מול מי יש לנו עסק, עם מה יש לנו עסק, עם איזה מפלצות. אנחנו עוד אוהבים, אנחנו כואבים, אבל אנחנו גם נחושים להבטיח שדבר כזה לא יקרה יותר. מחר יהיה יום מאוד קשה למדינת ישראל. יום מטלטל, יום של יגון. אנחנו מחזירים הביתה.
Catholics across Argentina have come together in Buenos Aires to offer prayers for Pope Francis as he undergoes hospital treatment for pneumonia. Devotees gathered at Basilica of St. John's de Flores, a place of deep significance in the Pope's early years, seeking divine intervention for his health. Vatican officials are providing an update stating that his condition has shown a slight improvement, bringing hope to millions of followers. At 88, Pope Francis' health has been growing concern, prompting a wave of prayers and support from across the globe. His well-being remains a focal point for the Catholic community, with faithful believers holding vigils and special masses in his honor. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has strongly criticized the recent diplomatic talks between the United States and Russia that excluded Ukrainian officials. Speaking to reporters, Trudeau warned that sidelining Ukraine from crucial negotiations not only undermines its sovereignty but also threatens global diplomatic principles. His concerns came after high-level discussions between US and Russian diplomats aimed at exploring potential resolutions to the ongoing war. Ukraine and its Western allies have voiced alarm over being left out for these talks, fearing that decisions made without Kyiv's direct involvement could compromise its territorial integrity and long-term security. Trudeau emphasized that any discussions about Ukraine's future must include Ukrainian leadership, reaffirming Canada's unwavering support for the country in its fight against Russian aggression. His remarks reflect broader concerns among the NATO allies that diplomatic efforts should align with Kyiv's interests rather than being directed by external powers.
Fundamental principle for Canada and for the vast majority of our allies that nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. Ukrainians have been fighting and dying not just to protect their sovereignty, their territorial integrity, they're also fighting to protect the rules-based order that keeps us all safe around the world. and has for close to 80 years now. This period of peace, stability, prosperity for the world happens because we had rules around borders, around not invading your neighbors, that Russia chose deliberately to violate a number of years ago. And that puts at risk not just Ukrainians' ability to determine their own future, it puts at risk all of our democracies, all of the rules that keep us safe and prosperous. That is why Canada and our allies are unequivocal on standing up against Vladimir Putin's illegal, immoral, unjust violations of the international order, and why I'm looking forward to sitting down with my European partners in a couple of hours to talk about how we will continue to stand unequivocally in defense of Ukraine, but also in defense of the rules that keep us fundamental.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has expressed cautious optimism regarding the recent diplomatic discussions between US and Russian officials in Saudi Arabia, viewing them as potential step towards resetting strained bilateral relations. Speaking to reporters, Putin emphasized that while the talks marked progress, rebuilding trust remains a crucial prerequisite for any meaningful negotiations. He acknowledged that diplomatic channels must remain open, but stressed that substantive results should be prioritized over symbolic gestures. Addressing a speculation about the future summit with former US President Donald Trump, Putin stated that such a meeting could be arranged but should focus on concrete outcomes rather than being just for drinking tea. Despite diplomatic overtures, the Kremlin continues its military operations in Ukraine, highlighting the ongoing complexities in US-Russia relationships. The talks in Saudi Arabia have drawn international attention as the world leaders closely monitor any shifts in Moscow's stance towards conflict resolution.
Что мы сейчас видели в ходе этой предвыборной кампании? Ну, все европейские лидеры, все без исключения, фактически напрямую вмешивались в избирательный процесс в США. Дело дошло до прямых оскорблений одного из кандидатов. Мы со своей стороны, конечно, было ясно, кому мы симпатизируем, но мы не позволяли себе вмешиваться, и уж тем более не позволяли никаких резких заявлений и оскорбительных выпадов в отношении кого бы то ни было из кандидатов. Мы этого просто не делали, а европейцы делали. Я вообще, честно говоря, удивляюсь сдержанности вновь избранного президента Соединенных Штатов Трампа в отношении своих союзников, которые вели себя подобным, прямо скажем, хамским образом. Он еще достаточно интеллигентно себя ведет в их отношениях. Но они не закрываются от этого. Ведь если мы говорим о украинском урегулировании, Соединенные Штаты работают со своими европейскими союзниками. Господин Келлог, насколько мне известно, сейчас в Киеве находится, да? До этого он встречался с...
Russian President Vladimir Putin has stated that Moscow is prepared to resume negotiations over the ongoing conflict with Ukraine, but emphasized that rebuilding trust with the United States is crucial for any meaningful progress. Speaking at a press conference in St. Petersburg, Putin acknowledged the importance of recent diplomatic discussions in Riyadh and extended his gratitude to Saudi Arabia for hosting the talks. While he signaled a willingness to engage its future dialogue, he also underscored the deep-rooted tensions between Russia and Western nations, which continue to hinder efforts towards a lasting ceasefire. The international community remains divided over potential pathways to peace with Russia, maintaining its military operations even as diplomatic engagements continue. The Kremlin stance suggests that while negotiations are on the table, Moscow remains firm in its strategic objectives, making a resolution to increasingly complex.
Первое, о чем бы хотел сказать, это о том, что мы договорились возобновить в нормальном режиме работу дипломатических ведомств, постоянное выдворение дипломатов из Вашингтона, из Москвы ни к чему хорошему не приводит. У нас, если так дело дальше пойдет, в этих зданиях будут работать только одни уборщицы, чей труд тоже...
And that's the end of the World 360. Stay tuned to CVR News English.